Okay, so we've got hopefully a very important topic to cover. What is evil? I hope it doesn't sound too theoretical because I think there's some very big misunderstandings of where does evil come from. And I try to talk from a psychological point of view, a very realistic psychological point of view, but although I introduce things personally from an Islamic point of view, let's do a super whiz round. Who is everybody? I don't like to do long introductions at all. My very quick introduction is I'm a Muslim. I do happiness classes in these live streams. And I mainly do it for non-Muslims because they're more logical, I think. That's what I would say. But Muslims can listen as well. Zarina, what would you like to say about yourself?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Zarina Matcha, aka The Rational Female. I am an author, anti-feminist, and modern spiritualist.
Thank you for making it so concise. Awesome. And Tayo, go for it. I haven't had you on for a while. Go for it.
Yeah, good to see you both. Tayo.
Oh, come on. What? Are you serious? Don't give me a shrug. Christian, very. Okay, we've had some really amazing conversations, except for when we're arguing about Christian doctrine, which I'm actually trying to get away from because I love the good stuff that comes out of you. So very spiritually insightful Christian. You couldn't say that about yourself, I suppose. So I will say it for
Yeah,
you.
I can definitely say Christian about myself, but
Cool.
the other stuff is a little bit.
Let everybody else say that for you, yeah? Okay, let's whiz through this, right? So I always have a document. I'm not gonna try to be, I'm gonna paraphrase it so I can get through it faster. Um, and so I always like to say, what's the point of this discussion? I think most Westerners don't understand what evil is. I would say it's, without going into too much, it's the delicate choice according to objective rules. So even Hitler, for example, thought he was a good person. I would say the lack of objective rules at the moment is making a lot of subtle evils that are destroying society, like marriage is collapsing, abortion rates are going up. Sure, you can have abortions if you absolutely have to, but it shouldn't be normalized. Lots of really bad things are happening based on smaller things. So, like pornography is going up because of other things, and because pornography levels are going up, pedophilia is going massively up, and people don't realize that. So that's that. And then another side of evil that I want to quickly explain in a bit. If I'm not sure if people recognize the guy on my thumbnail, he's done an experiment based on a very old experiment, Milgram's experiment, psychologist. Um, basically shows that people can be made to murder other people really easily. The average person will murder somebody else just because somebody told them to do so, and you'd be like, no, that's not true, but it's been shown many times. Maybe I'll go into the experiment at some point, but it's been shown so many times, even a movie's being made about it. And the simple experiment is you put on a lab coat, and you tell somebody in subtle ways to do small things in increasingly evilness, and they will do it. That's how Nazi Germany happened. Germans weren't evil people necessarily by themselves. Lots of bad things are happening at the moment in the world all the time, and it's because of this way. So I'm going to go through the Quranic idea. As a Muslim, I talk from the Quran. I'm going to be very super brief, as quick as I can. So why evil must exist necessarily, okay, is because, very briefly going to this verse of the Quran, when human beings were first put on Earth, let's say. I don't think they were plopped on. I do believe in evolution, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, God basically gave people, human beings, the ability to have like self-determination, choose for themselves, and by default, when that happens, evil, it comes into existence. When you have free will, bad things happen. Okay, and good things happen. But God's plan was that even more good things will happen than bad things in the very long term, let's just say. I don't want to go into that too much. What is evil? This is what I think people really don't understand. Okay. And it is the weakness of the soul which is prone to evil, right? And that prone to evil is when it's not guided, when its natural desires are not guided. So if we look at animals, we go, oh, they're just, stealing food from each other. I give some food to one puppy just outside, and then another puppy will just try to snatch it off and they won't care. But if a human being did that, it would be terrible, right? So we have much higher expectations of each other. And when we do anything like animals, then we become evil. People don't see that as evil, but they don't realize big evil comes from smaller evil. It's all a build-up, doesn't suddenly happen. And so when we ignore the small things, the big things become worse. Okay. And it's not what you feel is evil, okay, because that's what we call subjective morality, what you feel. Okay, as I said, Hitler thought he was a good guy. He thought he was a savior of Germany, right? A more subtle one nowadays is some people think it's evil to ask women to cover their hair. I just thought of that one because yesterday I was watching a video about it's only recently that in the West women started not covering their hair. And then on the other side, Muslims say, yeah, it actually gives you a peace if you do cover your hair because men and women are different. So I said, did I say women covering their hair? Yeah. So evil is not what we think it is. It is a subtle thing. And it's the lack of objective rules. Okay. And how do you overcome it? Let's talk about Satan because I think part of this discussion quickly, this came about. Tayo mentioned it, and I think it was because Zarina mentioned in a video something about there being no such thing as Satan. And I agree, there's no such thing as a physical Satan. But there is a power or spirit, whatever it's described as, not of too much concern to me anyway. So he says, oh, you believe, come to submission wholly, follow not the footsteps of Satan. So you cannot when you do not submit your will to God, you're not physically following the footsteps of Satan. So there's no physical Satan as such. Okay, he's an open enemy is also an important idea. So what have we got? Some ideas from this, because I'm rushing through it, is so first of all, Satan is not physical. We only follow his footsteps metaphorically. Secondly, Satan's behavior, or satanic behavior, I should say, comes from following your ego. And following your ego is essentially attempting to be God. Now, all these ideas sound really strange. Like, when did I attempt to be God? If you think about it, what is the modern Western understanding of success? It's just to be better than other people. You might not see it that way, but that's why people are never content. They're always like, I wish I was this, better than X person or something like that, right? Okay, and that encourages you. I mean, that's firstly, it's a stupid idea. That's why Satan is your open enemy, because it gives you the dumbest idea. And the right reason why he's your enemy is because when you follow those ideas, it's very self-destructive. That's all it is. Okay, and the only way you can overcome that is that insanity, as the Quran described it in another place, is to submit your will to God. And when you submit your will to God, God doesn't need anything from you. God just wants you to be a good person. When you do those good things, good as defined by not your feelings, your subjective feelings, but the objective rules of God, coming back to that idea, then you find inner peace, because God has designed you and knows what you need to do to have peace. And so the end goal, the first bit I said, was describing the first stage of the soul. The soul is there's three phases of the soul, and I just described the first phase of the soul when it's completely following its natural inclinations, and that's where it really harms itself. And the highest stage is when it's in line with God and it's found peace, and you as a human being will be pleased with whatever God has given you, and God will be pleased with you, is the way is summarized. But that's why hopefully I wasn't talking really fast. I'm always practicing. Could somebody tell me if any of that made sense? Like, did anybody follow any of that? I'm worried I did a lot of talking and I didn't ask. So Zarina, could you tell me, like, did anything make sense from that?
Yeah, so I think that was really well put, and I completely agree that yes, I don't believe in Satan or the devil as a pure physical force. And I've actually as well, the point of ego is really interesting because I believe as well that ego is symbolic of the devil, because I know in my tarot deck. But I think as well, like a lot of people misunderstand that as well, because the thing is, we do need a little bit of our ego, and what it is that we should not allow ourselves to be consumed by our ego. Because here's the thing: believing in yourself and having confidence in yourself and being driven. Funny, I was actually talking with a guy I know about this last night actually, because he was saying you do need some of your ego. Like you cannot be purely passive effectively. In order to stand up and fight and defend and believe in yourself and fight for what you believe in, you do need to have an ego to some extent. But what it is that what you do is you turn your ego into effectively part of your soul. And that's what it is that it's actually what happens is when your ego is aligned with your full mission, then it becomes like part of your soul. But if your ego
Yeah.
is consuming you, and I think that's really what the danger of atheism is, because if you believe that something is above you, i.e., if you believe in God, or I obviously submit to my goddess Bastet, then you believe that there is some greater force that is above you. But if you simply believe that you are the sole sum of your life, and that's what they say in AA, that it's self-will
Mm.
required. So I think that's really what it's meant. It's not that we should all just be meek and passive and shouldn't stand up for
I just
ourselves.
want to
It's
make
that we
sure
have
that
to,
people
yeah,
don't misunderstand the thing. It's not about being passive. It's actually being very active in the way of God.
yes, yeah,
But
being
it's
of service
basically
to
it's
God.
challenging your energy either into a selfless attitude. But of course, part of being selfless is you have to feed your body and have your basic needs met and things like that. But yeah, it's kind of just a different path.
Yeah,
But it's
having
not passive.
confidence in yourself is very important because I think as well there's a big problem in modern society. People have become very, very against people wanting to stand up for themselves, wanting to have confidence. Like if you say there's only two genders, people say that means you're arrogant or whatever. Being confident and standing up for yourself and having opinions and believing in things and believing in yourself and wanting to be successful does not make you a bad person. It becomes bad when you perceive when you want to basically use that to basically destroy others. That's the danger.
Cool. So thank you very much. I agree with so much of what you've said, and thank you for like telling me that you've understood some of what I said, because I tried to get through a lot of stuff and then I worried that I talked so much that nobody's understood it. So I like the feedback. Could you tell me, since we're going clockwise, Zarina, what are your ideas about evil? I mean, I think you've said a lot of things already.
Yeah,
Is there
well,
any more you'd
evil
like
for
to add?
me is just the flip side of good. And I think as well, but evil, when you integrate evil with good, it becomes balanced because we all need a bit of a dark side. We all need to use our shadow. And that's like yesterday on Twitter, I wrote something about how like kindness without cunning makes you weak. Cunning without
Mm,
kindness makes you cruel. But when you have kindness with
mm,
cunning, that's when you become an unstoppable force. So we need
interesting.
a bit of a dark side. We need a bit of a shadow. And I think the danger is when you have good and evil as two sides rather than as one unified force, the good cancels out the evil. And what it becomes is evil becomes subliminated with cunning and daring and confidence. And that's really where, as subliminations of brilliant defense mechanism, where you take the dark thing and you effectively channel it. And that's when you start to use it in a good way. So we need to merge the kind of dark side of ourselves with our light side. And that's how you end up with that unifying force.
Cool. I'm making notes like Tayo is. I used to make notes when I used to discuss things with Dust. Poor guy, he's disappeared. But I know he's alive. A friend told me. So, yeah, Tayo, eager to hear from you. Go for it. Your introduction as to what is evil, all that
Um,
kind of stuff.
Very quickly, I had a whole bunch of notes that I was gonna go through, but just to pick up off the thread that Serena started, the idea of evil being the inverse of good, I would modify that a little bit and say that evil is always in service of good. And I think evidence for that is what you pointed out, that even the Nazis thought that they were doing good. Um, it's almost impossible to find. I think the only person I can think of is Nietzsche, but he was very aware that the evil that he's doing is evil and he wanted that for the sake of power. But apart from Nietzsche, I can't think of anyone that wants to do evil for the sake of evil. It's always justified by a good. And so I would modify
Mm.
being an inverse of good to evil always being in service of good. But partly one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about evil, not so much about Satan, not too fussed, but I think, okay, I'm just gonna go through what I read. So I believe that where where we believe evil comes from directly affects how we fight it. And how we fight evil directly affects whether or not we can alleviate suffering, which directly affects the individual and communal happiness. To link it back to your the theme of your channel, and just to peel back a little bit, I think even atheist, agnostic, everyone's got a conceptualization of evil. Before we get into the woo-woo spiritual Satan stuff, I think even a child, one of the first sentence a child says repeatedly is "that's not fair," where they feel there's an injustice that's been done, and it's sort of that impulse that I want to, to focus on, because regardless of your stance on anything, um, especially another reason for this, I think this is a good topic, is the way we in this cultural climate on the internet where people are seeing other people as the epitome of evil. The way you see people can affect how you deal with them. If you think someone's, a spawn of Satan or directly enacting evil in the world, you're less likely to want to be in communal and community with them. So I think it's a very important topic for those reasons. Um, my I'm a Christian, like like it says in the title. I love that it says Spiritualist Zarina and Christian Tayo. It's just it's weird to see, but I
Can't
think
be fast, yeah. Go on.
for the sake of your channel, I think it's appropriate because you do have a variety of different Christians. So your viewers will have a good sample of what different flavor of Christians look like. But as a Christian, I think the best conceptualization of evil begins in the garden and with the tree of knowledge of good and evil. I think so. I wrote down this sentence: the seed of the fruits from the tree of knowledge of good and evil is planted in the heart of every individual. There's a Zarina brought up the ego, and the integration of the ego to me sounds like the integration of the understanding of the knowledge of good and evil within you and trying to follow the good rather than the evil. So I think those two ideas sort of track together. And I think it's best to conceptualize evil as, so I don't know, can I share something real quick? Can I present something?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think it should let you. Does it say present and stuff? Do you got the options?
Yeah, I'm just gonna
Cool.
put that on the screen for a second.
Do I have to press it? I think I have to press it. I pressed it. There you go.
So this is, I think, a very
Do you want to
important.
zoom in? Do you know how to, or can you zoom in?
I'll
Just to make it easier for some people, especially I think Zarina is on a phone as well. Cool.
That might be a bit too. Let's go back a bit.
How is that, Zarina? Is that easy? I think
Yeah,
I can. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back on the stream. So this is from a chapter from the Bible, Ephesians 6, and it's talking about, to give a little bit of context, the author, Apostle Paul, is in prison, and a lot of the Christians are being persecuted. This is at the very start of the Christian movement, and he was writing to them in how to deal with the persecution and how to go about it. And starting from verse 10 of Ephesians 6, finally, my brethren. Oh, let me change the from KJV because I know people might struggle to understand the Old English.
Old English.
Yeah. Let's go ESV. Yeah. So it says, finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may able to that you may be able to stand against the scheme of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers and authorities, against the cosmic powers over the present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand it, to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand firm. Stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as shoes for feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. So that I think if you've got conceptualization of evil as a war within yourself, as wrestling the impulse for you to do good rather than evil, and just fighting that battle, it makes the sorry, just gonna stop sharing screen. Yeah, it makes the way you conceptualize, it makes the way you react to people when you feel evil is being done to you. Um, if you see it as a spiritual battle, you're less likely to want to kill your enemy. I'll stop it there for now and let us go around again.
Yeah. So, I mean, because I was listening in and making notes and stuff like that, I didn't exactly get it. So you were saying, what was, okay, the last phrase, you said something about
Okay, so
if
I'm
you have
just
a
gonna.
spiritual battle. Go on. Oh, were you going to say more?
Oh no, I'm just gonna give shorter summary of what I've said so
Oh,
far.
yeah, that'd be perfect. Yes, please. Yes.
So, firstly, the best evil is like you're sort of brushed over the subjectivity of evil. I'm zoning in on that and saying whichever where you stand, Nazi or a Jew, both felt like they were fighting evil. And I think that's an important thing to recognize, because if we don't recognize that, then we'll always feel like we're on the good side and the other person's the evil side. So I reckon, like, zoning in on that, then okay, how do we deal with people that we feel like are doing evil to us? And my argument is that if we think of evil as a spiritual battle, we're less likely, like the verse said in Ephesians 6, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities in heavenly places. Meaning, if you recognize that, okay, this manifestation of evil that I'm feeling is a representation of a spiritual battle that I need to fight, you're less likely to want to fight a physical battle. And that will result in less bloodshed.
I love that, actually. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think I understand it. It's like if you realize the evil starts inside, then you will stop doing a physical battle and you work inside and
Yes.
inside other people as well, which you can't beat goodness into people. So I
But
love that one.
you can fight the spirits that you recognize in those other people as well. So
You
you can't
can, but yeah, you wouldn't beat them up though, like you're saying.
exactly, yeah, you
You
get
would try to fix like yeah, our members of parliament and stuff like that. I got something. I think I understood it, but I'm not sure if I really understood it. It was like something about palaces and something like where was it saying like
something
I'm
about what.
paraphrasing. It was something like palaces or something like that, like people in palaces and
Oh,
power.
principalities, so not palaces.
Okay.
Principalities. I'm just gonna get it up again for you. Yeah, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against rulers and against authorities, against the cosmic power over the present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in heavenly places.
Oh, okay. I
So
was
it's
thinking.
all
Go on.
lifted here up away from the physical realm into our spiritual realm. Like this battle is not like it's not a physical battle, it's not flesh and blood, it's against principalities and power and authorities in heavenly realms.
In heavenly realms. Oh, okay. Because I'm a big fan. I was thinking it was like actually I don't. I was thinking maybe it was saying you shouldn't be fighting people, your leaders, and thinking they're the evil ones.
Yeah.
And that's not actually unknown to Jesus, because Jesus said something along the line. I love this thing, but I always never say it properly, right? He said something about people cannot see the mote or the massive rock in their own eye, but they see the tiny speck in other people's eyes. Basically, they're always fighting evil as if it's in somebody else, and they don't realize it's in themselves.
Yeah, take out the log in your own eye before you take out the log in your own eye before you try to get out the speck in your neighbor's eye.
Right, because we're always good at pointing out faults in other people.
Yes,
And actually,
exactly.
that's the easiest thing to do, point out faults in other people, you know. And people might go, oh, well, these people are murdering loads of people. These, are, what's it called? Politicians are not accepting the ceasefire for Palestinian genocide and all that kind of stuff. But how do they get in there in the first place? I think if we take a few steps back and take some responsibility, we realize we're at fault, is how I feel about that one. So that's a really important point for me, that evil is not someone else necessarily. Evil is you. You have a responsibility to society to do something about it. In our liberal society, however we're distributed, in our modern societies, we love to point fingers, but I love to point thumbs. Like, start from yourself. That's where the problems start. Then I talk about other people, like what you should do. And I love the thing you said about it's a spiritual fight first. That's really, I think, super important. Can I just whiz through a few other points? We're not going necessarily in the circle anymore, but I made some points. I'm going to try to
May I
whiz
just make
them.
a quick point,
Yeah, go on,
actually?
go
I
on.
think that
Yes.
really, I really like what Tayo said about, we all having good and evil within ourselves. And I think that it's interesting as well, because usually in a war, both sides perceive themselves as good and the other as evil. And one does have to wonder, how do you effectively see which side is truly evil? Because it's like, for example, if I perceive myself as an anti-feminist as good and I perceive feminism as evil, I think a really good way is to look at the effect on society. For example, what are the effects of feminism? Marriage breakdown, men and women not staying in relationships together alone, men viewing, women being frightened of men, viewing men as predators, and men, viewing women as really shit. I think this is a good way to see it. It's that if you look at the effect on society, I think that's a good way. If somebody presents a philosophy that is effectively leading to the murder of millions of people, if it's leading to people, having lots of divorce, if it's leading to lots of unhappiness, as Khaled has said many times, one of the largest problems in the modern West is unhappiness and mental health disorders and the like. I think that's a really good idea to see actually what is the effect on society, because it's no use somebody presenting a philosophy. You have to look at what is the outcome, what is the effect, what are the consequences. And I really do think as well that that's really how we determine morality effectively. It's the consequences and it's the after effect that makes us determine whether or not something is good or evil or not.
I love that. So in the Bible, they will say something along the what was it? I'm the worst at. Was it the fruit something? The tree? What was it? God, Tayo.
The tree of the knowledge of good. The tree of the knowledge of good and
No.
evil.
If you want to like in English, the English phrase would be the proof is in the eating of the pudding. Like, yeah.
Well, it is, that's,
You shall know them by their fruits.
You shall know them by their fruits. So basically, if you want a way of measuring an ideology is basically through its solutions, its fruits, and how good it is. That's a really good way. I think that's cool. So I think this is sort of in response to Danny, who's asking loads of great questions. He's saying, who decides what is evil? And it comes back to what I said originally, and I think Tayo agreed. You have to have something called, and I think we all agreed maybe, we have to have something called objective morality, not what we believe at the moment, what you feel comfortable with at the moment. Like marriage, the age of marriage, that keeps changing. It used to be like 12, 13, whatever. Now it's got to be 16, 17, whatever, all these kind of things, right? So I think there's one side, which is the proof is in the pudding, like look at the results, what works, and also a logical way. But I think fundamentally it's necessary to have some objective rules. And who's best to give the objective rules, in my understanding, is if you know there's a God and that God proves that he is God. So like, for example, I would say in the Quran has lots of teachings that were scientific, that were not known at the time of its revelation. So therefore it must be from God. And then God says X, Y, and Z. Okay, I'll follow it. Like the God of the Quran proves he's God and therefore gives these bunch of rules. And if God's saying it, that's as objective as you can, because he created you, he knows you better than you know yourself. Like he's giving you the guidebook of like how you function best. So that's, I would say, who should decide what is good and evil.
God, Khaled. I actually think that the fact that most people throughout human history and most civilizations believe in God, and the fact that there's so many religions, I think that in itself is enough proof for God alone. Because think about it, most people, especially across the world, believe in God. Like atheism is actually quite rare, and I believe, Khaled, you've made this point as well. Most people are not atheists. So actually, the proof of God is in the fact that most people, since the dawn of time, in most cultures and most societies and most religions, the fact that we have so many religions, believe in God. I think the belief in God, what I would call Ra, effectively, is a belief that humans intrinsically have.
Cool. I mean, they've done a multi-million-pound social study to prove exactly what you're saying, which is they got a bunch of 2-year-olds or something before. I think 2 years old is the age before you can be not socialized or something like that. And they all believed in some higher power and something like that. And the Quran, I know Tayo patiently put his finger up, so I'm gonna give him a chance. But I'll very briefly say the Quran says that as though I said, before I created you, I asked, am I not your Lord? And we all said yes. Basically, essentially, the Quran is pointing out in our blueprint, we believe God exists. Yes, Tayo.
Just quickly to tag onto the believing in God point. I think I'm done trying to argue, prove God to atheists. There's a verse in the Bible that says only a fool says there is no God. So I'm just, at some point,
I used to be a fool. I agree, in a way. But anyway,
you can't.
I don't give up. Go on. Yeah.
I was gonna bring up the fact that Zarina started talking about feminism, and I would say that's an example of fighting principalities rather than people. Zarina is not out here recruiting a militia to go, invade the feminist institutions. What she's doing is we see it as she's using words and using a word, but it's in the Middle Ages. The problem, she's casting spells against spirits. She's casting spells against the spirit of feminism. Is another way of understanding what Zarina is doing, which I think tracks with the wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. Now, those principalities can be embodied they are embodied in people. They're embodied in flesh and blood. But it's more effective to fight the principalities than to fight individuals, because it's like cutting off the head of a snake rather than trying to trying to cut off the head of Medusa rather than cutting off each of the individual snakes. Basically, is what I think she's doing. Also, I just wanted to go. So I'm not quite sure, but I do believe that the fruits. Okay, so I want to focus less on like good. We can talk about that another day, but I want to focus a little bit more on the evil than the good, because I think my first suggestion for a topic was, is it better to focus on good and evil to Khaled, which is a little bit vague, and he helped me to narrow down to a better question, which I think is the question of where does evil come from? I think it's okay. So there are different thoughts. There are people that believe that evil can be systematic. So we just have to overthrow the system and get a better system in, and then we will solve all the world problems. So that could be either politically, I could even be like religiously, people that want to, they think if everyone adopts their religion, then the world would be perfect. And I think the individualization of evil is a better conceptualization than group like seeing evil in groups. So if you see evil in yourself more, then you're less likely to see groups of people as evil, because you recognize the evil you see out there, like we said earlier about the speck and the log, first started in here.
Cool, I love that.
And I think
don't treat people as groups. I love that, because then you get into tribalism.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think I'll stop that. I'll let Zarina speak. I've got more to say, but
cool. I'm going to whiz through some of the cool things that everybody says. All right. So Zarina says you need a dark side. I agree, that just being weak doesn't make you moral automatically. My understanding of morality is doing the right thing at the right time. So if you're first of all, you don't have you're not morally forgiving somebody if you're already too weak to punish them in the first place. So if you're weak, you can't really forgive them.
Wait, can I push back on that?
Go on.
I'll let you land and then I'll push back.
Oh yeah, and then I said you can't do justice if you're weak as well. Sometimes you need to put people in their place, put them in prison or whatever it is. You need to make the tough choice. But if you're weak and not even able to make a choice in the first place, then therefore you're not actually doing a moral action. It's just by lack of choices that you're making your action, taking your action. Do you disagree? Does it not make sense, or what do you think, Tayo?
Oh yeah, so I do disagree. I think
Okay, go for it.
That's partly why I was getting at about systems being a cure for evil, and thinking that we can get it into a utopic, not evil state without by punishing evildoers. And I mean, prison has been shown that it doesn't reform, but for the most part, it doesn't reform people. Often what it does is, and I know this from not just like, films, I know this because I know people that are living through it, is you go to prison once, you become unemployable, and now you're stuck in that cycle. And now you're just a regular.
So I agree that it's misused, but are you saying that there should never be any punishment?
No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that's not going to, it's not going to alleviate evil. It's not going to. At best, it's going to. And I think this is it's a good thing that with like prisons exist. I think all criminals should be out on the street. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if we're going to not talk about, the reason I used evil and not doing bad things is evil is the it's the opposite. It's the ultimate end of good, like doing bad. So stealing, yes, that's bad, but killing, evil. So evil is as a different connotation, and I think we will all agree on moral and God like objective. It was what we were talking. But yeah, and the other thing I wanted to say, you said you can't do justice if you're weak. I think that is naturally yes, that is correct. You do the weak get trodden on by the strong. And if you've got power, if you're more powerful, you're more likely to you're more likely to you're stronger than the weak. But I don't think that if you're weak and you feel injustice, that the solution is for you to get power and then trod on the people that were previously in power. I think that's the cycle of the evil.
Oh yeah, you should be careful. It doesn't mean you start doing wrong things when you have the power, because that's not morality either. Yeah.
But I think that's been the cycle of human history. Is an empire rises, the empire falls, another empire rises and does similar things to the previous empire, and it just goes around in cycles.
I mean, there have been good powers as well, but yeah. Okay. I would say a lot of the Islamic empires have done a lot of good. They've invented universities and given freedom to so many Jews, so many things like that. But I mean, as always, I'm always going cool. I'm always rushing through so many things, and there's so many great questions, and I'd hate to not even touch on them. Like Danny is pick up lots of points, and even Alika said something to bounce off Danny's idea. And based on what Tayo said, so let me quickly get into it. So Tayo said earlier on, evil is in service of good. I actually agree largely, right? Sounds really weird. And to kind of answer lots of questions in one go, Danny's is related to what Danny said, is evil part of God. Everything is essentially from God. God allows things to happen. God even allows evil to happen because God is all powerful. Okay, doesn't mean God wants evil, giving you the opportunity. The verse I gave in the beginning that I went through really quickly basically was this idea of why would God allow evil in the first place? And because God has got an ambition, let's say, I'm talking really quickly, so I'm probably using the worst word, to create human beings not even human beings. So our humanity in this world is only stage one. It goes into the next life, and even the next life is an infinite stage of progress. It's not like you just chill out on deck chairs in heaven. That's not actual heaven, right? Not the Islamic idea anyway. And so we're infinitely going towards beauty. We're becoming better and better things, and it requires free will to do that. Otherwise, there's no such thing as good. You can't do a good thing if you have no choice to do good or bad. So that's a rough answer to that, and it's kind of responding to Alika, who's a Christian, who said the Quran says nothing happens without the will of Allah. So exactly, you're right. Agree with you, Alika. And so what else? There
So
was
does the Bible, by the way. The Bible agrees with you. Really quickly, the Bible agrees with you. Isaiah 45 verse 9.
Cool. Yeah, please jump in, because when I start, but at the same time, I
That's
feel like
interesting, actually. Somebody commented about how Allah is the root of all evil, because the term I use for God is Ra, and I call Ra the effectively essence of everything. And effectively, evil is part of Ra. And this kind of circles back to what I was saying at the start of the video, really, that evil, when used in concordance with good, becomes like a form of power, as in, channeling your dark energy to use that. And I think the problem is when you have evil on its own without good, that's when you end up with things being destroyed. And that's why ultimately we all need guidance. And that's why, we all need to, as Khaled has said rightfully, we all need objective morality. Objective morality can only be achieved through believing in God, believing in Ra, through religion. And when people don't have that, that's when effectively people start to make up their own morality. And I think this is the fundamental problem with liberalism. I mean, I used to be a very, very hardcore liberal, because I usually I think I believed in a very, very like simple version of liberalism, and freedom and tolerance and all that. But when you actually get to the roots of it, and you start to really dig deep into liberalism, again, when you look at its effect on society, liberalism, do what thou wilt. Unfortunately, that leads to people saying, okay, so a man can become a woman can become a man, and then you end up, what's the long-term consequence of that? Is the destruction of humanity and the destruction of relationships. So
Sure.
yeah, effectively, the problem of morality is really, really a huge topic, and ultimately, I think it does come down to its effect on society, and that's
Sure.
really again, yeah.
So I wanted to respond to the first point. I agree with. I mean, obviously, I agree with the thing you about objective morality, because you're agreeing with me. But you said before that, is God the root of all evil? And you said it's all connected. Yes, I agree that essentially God has the power to do everything. But this is, I think there's the nuanced answer that the Quran also mentions, and it's something like this. So first of all, God describes as himself. When I say him, just the lack of ability to explain in English. Basically, God is genderless. Basically, God describes himself as the light of the heavens and the earth. Sorry,
no, silly comment. You carry on.
Okay. So God is the light of the heavens and the earth, like the light that gives you a feel of like peace and all this kind of stuff. But not only that, also the guidance that we need. And when we, in the Quran, the word for disbelievers is somebody who hides from that light, that actively hides, like says, I don't want to listen to this stuff. What they do instead is they try to find alternatives to that peace that God gives, and you will never find peace. So you're always chasing things in a selfish manner. I want this, I need this, and it's always at somebody else's cost and things like this. So the point is that although it's not really that God makes people evil, it's the lack of God that makes people evil, is my short answer.
That's why we need to believe in God, and that's why ultimately humans do need guidance. They need to be guided back to God, back to the source, and we can only really do that through, collective union.
Yeah, and I mean, just to give some sort of scientific background or something, psychologists have always said if you believe in God, follow religion, you have a lot more peace, you have less depression, so many other things. And I always link this one of my favorite videos about this from a channel called Big Think. Just search religion, evolutionary, something or other. Something I can't remember now. I'm saying it really quickly. But anyway, there's lots of evidence. Psychologists have known this for a long time. So God, for some reason, gives you peace. Even just being in nature, which I think is a reflection of God, gives you more peace than any pharmaceutical drug. When I say peace, it's more powerful to be. It's a more powerful antidepressant than any pharmaceutical drug. Is how I mean to put it. Okay. So I've said a few things. Is there one other thing that the way you see? Oh, okay. I was going to say one more thing because I loved it from Ty. Is that the way you see people affects how you deal with them? I thought that was awesome. I think I suppose I'm not sure if I should. It's repeating the same things, like, but maybe I didn't explain it very well. The reason why I like that Jesus quote is because we're very good at pointing out ills in other people. And that is generally a bad thing, but I think it's actually a superpower if you use it correctly. So if you can see tiny faults in other people, and instead of saying, "Oh, that person is bad," what you say is, "That must be in me as well," and I'm going to search for it in me because we're really blind to our own faults. So I think that's an awesome way to do it. And only when you start fixing things in yourself, even when I tell other people, like, you should do this, you're doing something wrong, homosexuality is wrong, whatever, I would happily say there's homosexuals out there who are much better human beings than I am. I don't know. I'm not there to judge, because in Islam, only God is the master of the day of judgment. Like, master means like he's the only one who judges, really. My job is to say, hey, you're falling off a cliff, try not doing that, that's really harmful, it's up to you. But I'm not God, so I don't get to choose. Like, if you're going to fall off that cliff, you're going to do it anyway. So I consider homosexuality just bad for you. That's all. And I talk to gay people. We've got a gay person who's going to come on Monday as well. So I'm friends with all of them. I'm just saying what I believe. Anyway, what I think works is better than just what I believe. But anyway, cool. Anybody want to jump in? I'm looking through comments, all the cool comments. Objective morality? Does anybody? I think we've talked about different ways, but I'm going to try to not talk. Does anybody want to explain what objective morality is? Because everybody's kind of, I think, Zarina, do you want to explain what objective morality is, so I can stop talking?
Perhaps Tayo would like to speak because he hasn't spoken.
Oh, go on, Tayo, go on. Do you want to explain objective morality as well, and then say whatever you want to say, Tayo?
I think it's a sticky one still, because that's where all of this agreement that we've been having so far comes down. Because I don't know, you said it about subjective morality. Sorry. Okay. Objective morality is, just really quickly, basically, from a Christian perspective, it means that God is the one that decides what is good and what is evil, and He has made that basically human beings are not able to decide for ourselves whether something is good or evil, and we have to recite to a higher power. Which higher
I
power?
agree with that, but the problem with that sometimes is people commit evil acts and claim they're doing it in the name of God, and that's really where things become dangerous. It's when people try and use God.
Which is what Danny, I think, is trying to point out. And I think it will come back to the thing you said earlier on, Zarina, about I summarized the proof is in the pudding, right? So what works? So do criticize it. I encourage, like yesterday, was it yesterday, day before yesterday? I can't remember. Everything's blurring now. I've been encouraging people to be Islamophobic, and I'm a Muslim. I was like, come on, say it.
Well, yeah,
say
for
all the
example,
stuff.
one of the most dangerous things, obviously, right now is Islamic, fundamentalism. As you know, I'm very against Wahhabism, which is part of the Sunni faction, and effectively they use the Quran to justify murder and the slaughtering of people, slaughtering of animals and the like. And that is really what's quite dangerous. Is when people try and use a belief in God to justify evil actions. And I think, again, if you look at the results of that, that's really what shows. It's like, if people are saying, okay, God told me to start this war, God said I could do this, God said I could do that, that's when things become dangerous, which is why I think ultimately these people are not really worshipping God, they're worshipping their ego. Because if you're really truly worshipping God, then, for example, if I worship Astat, then I gain my morality, my things from her, because it's like she is herself, she's a goddess, she is not evil, she is effectively, she's a part of Ra. So I gain real morality from her. But it's like, I think these people who claim they're worshipping God, they're not really worshipping God, they're worshipping their own egos, because it's their egos which ultimately believe that they are justified in slaughtering innocents and imposing their worldviews onto others and trying to destroy and wipe out entire groups of people. I think that's ultimately very dangerous.
Cool. So one of the way I look at it, right, is you can let evolution, as it were, do its job. So you can disagree with me. I share my opinions, and I try to give facts. They're not just opinions, hopefully. based on like secular knowledge, if you want to describe it, like psychology and science and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if people don't want to listen, let's let evolution do its job. So I'm saying, in short, say in the UK, for example, Muslims having more children, their ideology is going to continue. There's loads of other people whose ideas I don't think are working, and therefore their marriages are not working. Therefore, they're not having children, and therefore they're going to die out, and their ideas are going to die out by themselves. And that's just one process by which you can eliminate distinguish good and bad ideas and stuff like that. Even the Quran says there's no compulsion in religion because good and bad have been made distinct. So if you simply look for the facts, I think you'll see what is reality. The Quran says truth breaks falsehood. So you can just compare ideas, in short.
Does this end at 11?
Yes, 6 minutes. Thank you for reminding me. There's so many interesting comments. I'm trying to get the biggest
really quick.
comments. Go on.
Just a couple of thoughts on that. I think it's easy to just say, yeah, those people are not worshiping God, but I'm sure those people are saying the same about you, and whoever those people are. Meaning, it's very easy for someone to be convinced that they are doing good, because, like I said, the line between good and evil, the seed of good and evil is planted in the heart of every man. So it's very easy to be mistaken. And I think, like you rightly said, Khalid, you say let evolution have its place. I think I'll say we'll find out the day after the world ends, because I don't think it's easy. We don't live long enough to find out whether we are right about what we believe. And I think for those, so I'm a kind of a weird Christian, I'm semi-universalist, meaning I believe that there is, in whichever religion you are, if you are beauty first, if you're truly searching for good, and in every religion in every art there's good and evil. So you can, whatever frame you were born into, if you look into your heart, you can search and find the good, and follow that good path the best you can. And I think God will judge at the end of the day after the world ends whether or not each individual follows that path. I think it's a little bit short-sighted to say, okay, the people, the empires that were around for 100 years, does that mean they were good for 100 years and then they became evil, that's why they went away? Basically, I'm saying it's not easy to judge based on now whether someone is good or evil. I think that will be revealed the day after the world ends, on Judgment Day.
Okay. Well, I mean, my brief thoughts are, if a empire survives for a long time, then it must have a lot of good things about it for it to survive. You can see right now in the UK, because of the lack of clear moral rules, is collapsing on itself really quickly. But before that, they had strong Christian values that they stood by, which kept them sturdy. So that's an idea. I think God makes the world comprehensible, understandable. Like if it was just like we have to wait until the next life or the judgment day to have some idea of what is right and wrong, we'd be in big trouble. And that's why the Quran keeps making you think. It says, here are the ideas, and good and evil have been distinguished because of the facts. And it gives you lots of facts and gives you lots of ideas, so you know for sure. I think we shouldn't be, I don't believe in blind faith, let's say. I believe in logical faith. And the same, yeah. So anybody want to say anything about that? We've only got a few minutes. I do really want to wind up in a minute. So yeah, does anybody want to respond to that? That I think belief is logical, and we can distinguish between good and evil if we apply logic. But if we want hard and fast, we do need hard and fast rules at some point, which are God's laws. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of ideas there.
Just a quick response, because we don't have long enough for me to give a proper response. I would say that it's the rider, the elephant, and the monkey. You love psychology, and the elephant, the rider thinks that is the logical part of a human being, thinking they're making all the decisions based on logic, when in reality there's a whole bunch of subconscious things going on, which he calls the elephants, that's guided, including emotions, story mode, things that we're not always aware of. And logic is the way we make sense after the fact of the things that we believe. So I think belief comes first, then logic, not logic, then belief.
Cool. Zarina, do you want to say anything else? I'm actually going to try so hard to finish on time today. Zarina?
No, it's been a very good discussion. I don't really have much else to contribute other than the fact that, yes, at the end of the day, I believe that humanity does need guidance back to God. And I think that, effectively learning to, that's how we end up with people being able to think rationally. And that's how we ultimately return to a state of objective morality where hopefully people are serving the light rather than being slaves to their own dark desires.
Yeah, I'll
Cool.
go next so that you can have the final
Yes,
word,
go
Khaled.
for it. Go on.
Thank you both. Like Zarina said, it's been a wonderful discussion. I'm very impressed and grateful for your openness, Khaled. The fact that you welcome all these different voices onto your channel and give them a platform to, share their ideas and, go back and forth. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I suppose the last thing I'll say, based on what Tayo just said, in the Quran it says, find one word that you have in common, that you believe in one God. And it tells the Muslims to basically build bridges rather than fight each other, because that's how we make more progress. People think beating other people in arguments is the best way. Actually, you actually create better unity and more progress by understanding each other and finding your commonalities, which we have many, even though we have different belief systems in this one conversation. Thank you very much, people in the live chat as well. I'm going to stop now because I never stop in time. Thank you, all of you. Bye, 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 bye.